theyeshiva.net.
So what was the summation of Daf Hey Amud Beis and Daf Vav Amud Aleph? That we have two distinct psukim about not having Comets for 7 days. The first pasuk in Parshas Bhai, Moshe Rabbeinu says, Shivas Yamim Sa'or Lo Yimotzei Bivatechem. For 7 days, yeast should not be found in your homes. He doesn't mention anything outside the house, nor does he mention anything about yours. All he says is sa'or, flat, any type of yeast. Anybody's yeast can't be in your home. That's how I would have interpreted it. But then a few verses later, the nusach, the text changes after they leave Egypt, where Hashem tells Moshe that lo yeira lecha Chametz b'chol gvulcha v'lo yeira lecha sa'or b'chol gvulcha. You shouldn't see chametz or yeast for yourself in all of your borders. For yourself you shouldn't see. So suddenly he expanded it from homes to borders, and he limited it from flat chametz to for yourself. You shouldn't see chametz for yourself, which we interpret to mean you can't see your own, but you may see in your property chametz of others, for example, of a Gentile who's allowed to have chametz on Pesach, of course, or hekdesh, the Beis Hamikdash's chametz, which does not belong to you at all. So, as the Brisa and the Gemara explained, from the contrast and the comparison of these two psukim, we derive the various halachas about what type of chametz you're allowed to have in your home and in your properties, and what type you're not. The first pasuk gives me the lesson that I'm not allowed to even hide chametz, even if I don't see it, because it says it shouldn't be found. So that's principle number one. I'm not allowed to even hide chametz, yatmin, because it's still found, right? The second pasuk gives me the limud, the lesson, that anything that belongs to me, any property that belongs to me, it's part of my domain, even if I don't live there, it's not my residence. Nonetheless, I'm not allowed to have chametz there as well. I compare sa'or, which applies the halachas of the first pasuk to the second, and the second to the first, which means even outside of my home, I'm not allowed to hide chametz, and even in my home, I'm allowed to have chametz that does not belong to me, that's not lecha, it's not the chametz that is yours for you. So I apply the stringency of the first in the second, and I apply this leniency of the second in the first. And we make absolutely no distinction of what type of chametz you're allowed to have in your home as long as it's not yours, it belongs to the Gentile. I don't care if it's somebody who's not under me, or somebody who doesn't live with me, or even somebody who is under the domain of the Jew, or even lives with him in the same courtyard, which you might say, over there the distinction should be made that you should tell him to get rid of it, because you have the authority to tell him, and he's with you, and it's much more accessible. Nonetheless, we say that lecha means if it's not yours, it's fine. And as Rav explained, we have two lechas. We have the lecha of Parshas Bhai, we have the lecha of Parshas Re'eh, which we can use as well. And that is that, we learn that every type of chametz that's not yours, it belongs to the Gentiles, you can. And yet, the Brisa made one critical distinction and said, you're allowed to have chametz of a non-Jew in your home, but you're not allowed to be mekabel a pikadon min anachri. You're not allowed to accept chametz from a non-Jew and keep it in your home or your property on Pesach, which seems like a contradiction. And this is where the Gemara explains that the Brisa obviously distinguished between two types of chametz of a non-Jew. There's the chametz that is in your home, but you did not accept responsibility for it. In other words, it's exclusively his. even though it's in your domain. Perhaps he lives with you, perhaps he's staying with you, perhaps he brought it in, perhaps he gave it to you. He gave it to you to watch, to guard, but you're not assuming responsibility for it. That chametz you're allowed to have. Yikabel pikadin. A pikadin is usually something that you commit yourself to watch, meaning I take responsibility for it, and then it's forbidden. You'll say, if it says lo yira lecha, it means you shouldn't see chametz for yourself, meaning chametz that is for you, chametz that belongs to you. Why would this chametz be considered belonging to you when it does not belong to you? And this is the very important distinction between the fact that in the first pasuk, Moshe Rabbeinu did not put in the word lecha. He just said lo yimatzei bevateichem. He could have said shivas yamim sa'ar lo yimatzei lachem bevateichem. That would have been appropriate, just as he says later lo yira lecha sa'ar b'chol gvulcha b'chol gvulecha. The fact that he doesn't say lo yimatzei lachem bevateichem is teaching me that he wants to teach me that there's also a concept that 7 days you're not allowed to have any chametz in your house. Lo yimatzei bevateichem sa'ar, not your sa'ar, not lo yimatzei lechem. It shouldn't be for you, your own. Lo yimatzei without a lechem. Why? Because you want to teach me a principle that all chametz is not allowed to be in my home. So now I'm left with a contradiction. In one place you tell me that the principle of not having chametz only applies to mine. In another place, the first place you tell me the principle is complete, absolute. Chazal are struggling with this. Why would you do this? The answer is because we have to make a distinction, and this is where they made this distinction, between two types of chametz that are not mine. There's a type of chametz that's completely not mine. That I will permit, because it says lo yira lecha. But lo yimatzei without lechem teaches me that even a type of chametz that is somewhere in twilight zone, it's not mine, and yet it has some type of relationship with me. Why does it have a relationship with me? Because I assumed responsibility for it. It's under my care. It's not just physically in my domain. It's under my care. I assume responsibility for it. It has a connection to me. That would be the chametz, that even though it's not mine, it's a Gentile's, I'm forbidden to have in my house, because it says lo yimatzei without a lechem. And even though Rava applied the second lecha of lo yirav Parshas Rei to lo yimatzei, the fact is he applied it. It was a cut paste, but it was not there, and it remains not there. It's some imeina inyan. That itself is precise and meticulous. I will apply it to teach me that the application of Shalchayat Raya goes on any type of Gentile, even a Gentile who lives with me, as long as I'm not taking responsibility. That's where I will use the lecha. But the fact that it says lo yimatzei without a lecha or a lechem teaches me that there's a situation in which no chametz is allowed to be in my house, even not my chametz, because it just says stam chametz, any chametz. But another pasuk it says only mine. The answer is there's chametz that's in between. It's not mine, but I took responsibility. That's where we say, the Chazal said we have to say from the structure of the psukim that would be prohibited, and that is the halacha. If a non-Jew puts chametz in my house, and I take responsibility for it, I take achrayus for it, I assume responsibility, even though it's completely not my chametz, and if he comes back in the middle of Pesach or after Pesach, he has a full right to the chametz, I can't pay him back with money. Nonetheless, that chametz I will be over on Bal Yimatzei, Shivas Yam Bal Yira, Bal Yimatzei, Shivas Yam Sa'ar, Lo Yimatzei, I will be over on that chametz if it's left in my house for Pesach, biblically, because I took responsibility for it. And the Gemara says it's not only because we hold Davar Hagorim L'Mam and K'mam and Dami. Reb Shimon holds that something that causes a benefit for money, it's as though you have equity in it. Meaning, since you would say that if the chametz gets stolen by a thief, I'm going to have to pay back the $500. So the fact that I have this chametz in my house gives me some equity. It's like one of my assets. It's giving me $500, even though I can't sell it for $500. It's not mine. But the fact is that the fact that it's here is allowing me to keep $500 in my bank, right? Because if somebody steals it, I would lose that money. So Reb Shimon holds that's called having equity in this chametz. It's called that I have some type of ownership in this chametz, it's giving me some monetary benefit. That's not the vart, because that would only be according to Reb Shimon. Even according to the other opinions, who say it's not called I have equity in this chametz. Even though if it would get lost, I would have to pay for it. But the bottom line is that it's not mine in any practical way. But the fact that the pasuk says lo yimatze without a lechem, that teaches me that when it comes to chametz, since if it would have got stolen or lost, the burden of loss is on whom? On the Jew. Just like if I have something and I lose it, the burden remains on me. So here, even though I have no equity in this chametz, but since I assumed responsibility for it, I'm taking care of it, I'm concerned for it, and I would even have to pay for it, so the Torah treats it legabe chametz as though it's mine, because it doesn't say lo yemotze lachem, and that's how we explain the distinction, and thus you cannot keep this chametz in your house.
Can you sell the chametz?
Yes.
So you all chametz to the guy.
So you're asking a good question. So how do people have freezers or refrigerators or pantries with chametz of a non-Jew in their home? They can't take responsibility.
You want it. You want to have it after Yom Tov. So you are able.
Does the contract of the Mechira take that into account? Some specific.
I mean, you want to make sure you have it after Yom Tov, no? I mean, so you're kind of taking.
Well, when it comes to selling chametz to a guy, I mean, if theoretically he wants to pay up the money and take the chametz, he's allowed to. He's allowed to. You can't force him otherwise. I mean, we all trust that most Gentiles will not want to deal with the entire Monsey and coming up with, I don't know, $45 million and buying off houses and apartments and garages and chametz and so forth. But theoretically speaking, let's think about it practically. Forget about everybody selling their chametz. If you sell your own chametz to a guy before Pesach, right? You have a whole pantry with, 600 bottles of vodka and liquor that are very expensive. It costs $20,000, and you don't want to burn it. You don't want it to get stolen. You don't want to burn it, right? And you sell it to him, right? It's his property now. If he he may give you $10 as a deposit, but he owns let's say $20,000 for it. If he comes after Pesach and says, okay, I'll give you the $20,000, I'll pay up my loan, and I take it, there's nothing you can do about it. But he has to pay for it.
Even though I'm taking sort of a price on it, because I really want it. I don't want it to get stolen. I'm not taking a price for him.
You may not want to, but the question is legally, if somebody steals it, are you mechuyev to pay him for that loss? No. If you're mechuyev to pay him for that loss, it could be a problem. We'll soon see an argument in the next sugya between Rashi and Tosefos. What happens if you designate a special place in the house for his chametz? Are you still not allowed to take achrayis? But at least according to many opinions, you're not allowed to assume responsibility for it. Meaning, if you have responsibility for his chametz in your home, it's a problem. That's lo yimotze. You're not allowed to have that chametz in your home, even though it's not yours, because your achrayis makes it yours, according to this gzeirus hakasav when it comes to beer chametz.
If you insure against it, it's like it's yours.
Yes.
So you should insure it, and you should disclaim it. And you should
if you insure against it,
the goy does comments in the refrigerator.
If the guy uses you as an insurance, yeah.
If they make a claim and it gets paid, then it was your insurance.
Right.
And then it was your comments.
Yeah.
In case your friend asks you to store a box of whiskey in your basement,
yeah,
you don't have space. And you answer, it's okay.
So
I'm not responsible.
Very good. That's fine. You have a neighbor, a Gentile, right? He's going to New Zealand to see the kangaroos, and he stores a case of whiskey in your basement, and you're not assuming responsibility for it, and you're not selling it to him because it's not yours to sell him; it's his. That's what we're learning here. That you're allowed to. You're walking in your basement and there's whiskey right there, and you never sold it to any guy, but it doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the guy, and you did not assume responsibility for it, which means if somebody breaks into the house, chas v'shalom, and takes away this whiskey, right, you will not assume any responsibility for it, right? There is one opinion that I did mention yesterday, And that is that even if you assume the most basic responsibility means that you're not going to be negligent. In other words, you're going to keep an eye on it. According to many, that is also considered an assumption of responsibility, which is a much more stringent view. In other words, if the guy puts down the whiskey and I say, listen, I'm not responsible for this. I'm not dealing with it. I'm not worrying about it. You want to do it, do it. That's fine. Right? Even if I assume responsibility, basic responsibility, that I won't be negligent, but I don't assume responsibility if it gets lost or it gets stolen, right? According to many, that would be fine. That's the Pashtus Gemara, and according to Halacha, at least one view in Halacha, a very common view which you could rely on. However, I'm just saying there is a shitta that says that even the most basic level of achrayus, meaning that I'm going to assure no negligence, I'm taking responsibility. I'm not going to do X. I'm not going to put in an alarm system for you. I'm not going to become a bank with a safe. What?
Home insurance really covers everything.
In a Chana?
Locking the door probably is locking the door. By locking the door, you the little responsibility of that check.
No, well, if you're locking the door anyway, that's fine. We're talking if you tell him if you makabel achrayus, any point of achrayus, it could be an issue. Okay, now let's see further. So this is the basic structure of how the Chazal understood these halachas, analyzing the Brisa and putting all the psukim together. Again, I can't say lo yimotze means that even if I didn't take achrayus, I should transgress the isur, because it already says lo yira lecha. So we already know that the Torah allows you to see in your home or in your property chametz that doesn't belong to you. So I can't say lo yimotze, I can't expand it and say, okay, no chametz in my house. I could have chametz in my house if it's not mine. So what's the logical division to make? Assumed responsibility, didn't assume responsibility. We know also, if we could go from the monetary to the psychological, in psychology there's a concept called codependence. Anybody here deals with codependence? What's a lot of codependence is you makabel achrayus. You assume responsibility for what's going on in everybody's life in your house. And it's a form of ownership. Even though you don't actually own it, you don't really own it, but in your mind, you carry around, and people who deal with it know, you're basically carrying around a lot of chametz that doesn't belong to you, because you take responsibility for it. And you have to know when to take responsibility. You take responsibility for your own things. You can't take responsibility for other people's chametz. You take responsibility for your own. And when you take responsibility for other people's lives and other people's chametz, you don't actually help them eliminate it. You just expand now the chametz into your property and not only their property. In fact, it doesn't allow me to be part of the solution because I become part of the problem. Okay, that's just al derech havoid. Now we come to the next stage. You could think about this. That's part of enabling, and I become the guilty one, and I take full responsibility. There's no boundaries. So Kabbalas Achrayus is some form of ownership, even though technically you don't own it, but you somehow became the owner. Suddenly this chametz became my baby, and the Torah compares it to my chametz, even though monetarily it's not my chametz, and I may not or have equity in it. Depends on the two views of how you learn davar agarim l'maman. It doesn't have to be hidden, no. The guy's chametz does not have to be hidden.
Why do you put your chametz away in closets and lock it?
You're asking a question. Why do we tape the closet, or why do we seal the closet? So we'll see later in the Gemara Davav Amud Aleph why we do that. But as far as we're concerned at this moment, you could see it in open. You don't have to hide it. Lo yira lecha. The chametz that is yours, you're not allowed to see. Aval atoroya, you could see shlachem. Yeah. So at least min haTorah, we'll soon see the Chazal were afraid of people eating it, so they made a special precaution. But at least min haTorah, I could have that whiskey on my counter, in my kitchen, in the open, and I see it the whole Pesach. But I'm not seeing my whiskey. It's fine. I'm seeing your whiskey. It's the Gentile's whiskey, or hektish, Beis HaMikdash, and I didn't assume responsibility for it. It's fine. We'll soon see a precaution about not having it in the open completely, so Parshas it's out of fear of eating it because it's right there. We'll soon see in the next piece. Zog the Gemara weiter. Davav Amud Aleph, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm sorry, 4 lines from the top. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 lines from the top. The last 2 words, Ba'u Minei Meirav. Another question which has to do with something that is connected to a non-Jew, but it's by a Jew. Bo minei Rav. They asked a question from Rav. Behemus arnuna, an animal that is subject to royal taxes. Chayeves b'bchayra, ein chayeves b'bchayra. There were rules in certain countries. Arnuna is a royal tax. 10% of your animal offspring has to go to the king. This is called Arnuna, which is a royal tax. Meiser, but not Meiser to the divine. We're talking about Meiser, a tenth that's going to the king. The vart here is not so much 10%. It could be 10%, it could be 50%, could be 9% or 20%. The point is, this is called a royal tax. Royal tax, yeah. Chayeves b'bchayra and chayeves b'bchayra. Very fascinating question. Is my b'chayr the first male born? Am I obligated in the obligations of b'chayr or not? What's the question? We know the Torah obligates a Jew that when your domesticated kosher animals, kosher domesticated, meaning a cow, a sheep, or goat, those three, bakar, soin, sheep, goat, and cow, give birth, the first male born offspring of the kosher domesticated animal becomes sanctified. It has a kedusha. We say Kadesh li kol b'char. It's actually the first instruction that Moshe gave. Hashem told him after Kadesh li kol b'char, right? Kol b'char. What's the lashon? Kadesh li kol b'char. Petticoat rechem b'vnei Yisrael ba'adam uva behema lihu, and it goes to the kohen. If it's actually a complete animal, meaning it's unblemished, he brings it as an offering in the Beis Hamikdash. We read about it every morning. Habchor, v'hamaiser, v'hapesach, kachem kalim. Habchor nechel hakoyanim, belongs to the kohen, and he can eat it. Part of it goes on the mizbech. If it's a balmum, if it's blemished and he can't be brought as a carbon, then either it was born that way or later a blemish happened. So then it's still the kohen's, but it's a balmum. It's like a regular animal that he could use the way he would like to use it. Okay.
If it was a regular before, how did the question arise? Because once it's been makdash, Petticoat, or he identified it, given to the goy in taxes would be the wouldn't it?
No.
First of all, it's Melech, and Melech is, would be Jewish king, right? So,
No, we're talking about a Gentile there, are we? Gentile
and the
taxes.
Jewish king who is a coin, no?
So what's the question? What's the question? The question is as follows. Let's see Rashi. Chayeves b'bchayra, arnuna, hamelech noitel isim min habehema min hatvua. The royal taxes, the king takes 10% of all your animals and all your produce, all your grain. Taxes. Chayeves b'bchayra. The Chaim alone we have halacha, kol sheyad nachri be'emtza, p'tudim min habchayra. Just like the animal of a Gentile is potter from b'chayra, he doesn't have to give it to the kohen. Whether the mother belonged to a Gentile or whether the fetus belonged to a Gentile, which is why if somebody buys from a Gentile the fetus of a cow, the cow is going to give birth, and you buy that fetus when it's still pregnant from a Gentile, it's potter from b'chayra. If somebody sells his fetus to a non-Jew, it's potter from b'chayra, because it says hikdashti li kol b'char b'Yisrael, right? Kadosh li kol b'char Petticoat rechem b'Yisrael belongs to the Jewish people. What about if there's a partnership? Me and a guy together, buy a cow. The next year, 50%, 50%. The next year she gives birth to a baby boy. Is that chayev b'chayra or not chayev b'chayra? I own it, but he also owns it. We bought together a cow, 50-50. This cow becomes pregnant. She gives birth to a baby the next year, or whenever it is, a male. Is it chayev b'chayra or not? So Rashi says, Chaim alone, we have a halacha, kol sheyad nachri be'emtza p'tudim min habchayra. As long as there is the hand of a Gentile involved, it's exempt from b'chayra. Shenemar, li kol b'char b'Yisrael avaloi b'acher. Kadosh li kol b'char Petticoat rechem b'vnei Yisrael. Or this pasuk that he quotes here is ikdashti li kol b'char b'Yisrael. The sanctification is only a b'char that is born among Yisrael, meaning it belongs to a Jew, and it says kol b'char, which means the entire b'char has to be a Yisrael, not half of the b'char. So therefore, even partnership will exempt it. Now here's a question. Is this called partnership or not? I own the animal, but the king has a lien. 10% goes to him. Now he may not take the b'char. I have to give him 10%. But somehow there's a partnership in the sense that he has a hand, Yadei Be'emtza, in these behemoths. So Rashi says, this flock, that 10% of the king is inside of it, meaning 10% of it, any 10% belongs to the Melech. So when the first male is born, do I have an obligation to give the Kohen the B'chor? Do I say, no, it's like a partnership that I have between me and a Gentile, even though it's not a classic partnership. We didn't buy the cow together, but because of the royal taxes, I'm obligated.
When do you give Meiser? Before
B'chor.
taxes? What taxes are after taxes? I just after taxes, what's the question?
No, basically, if he would have been a partner in all of the offspring, it wouldn't be a question that he's exempt from B'chora, because as we said, Shutfus with a non-Jew exempts you from B'chora. However, the case in this tax has to do with this. He doesn't take 1/10 of every baby. That would be very difficult. He takes 1/10. If you have 100 animals, right, over the year, he'll take 10 out of it. So maybe the Kohen could come to the Jew and say, give me my B'chor. It's my baby. So the Jew tells the Kohen, excuse me, I have a partnership with the king. He's getting 10%. The Kohen will say, 1 second. You don't know which 10% the king is going to take. Maybe he's going to take 10% of females. Maybe he's going to take 10% of babies that were born later. In other words, your B'chor already has the Kedushas B'chora. Or maybe the owner could tell the Kohen, the Melech has a stake in all of it. He could take the B'chor. I can't tell him the B'chor is not yours. This is not part of the partnership. And therefore, Behemas Nachri is part of B'chora. He has the right. He has the right, yeah. So the Gemara explains.
The question is if he's a real shutfus.
Yeah. Yeah. Is this called shutfus or it's not called shutfus? So the Gemara, logically, we would say this. Wherever you could pay him up with money, like a mebayal on the chayev, then there's no question that l'cha'ori would be chayev in the kedusha of B'chor. Why? Sagt Rashi, the Monsey Masala klei l'nachri b'mais loyti boilan kivan da'akati lo'zacha nachri b'hem. Since the Gentile did not yet take it, v'dinoi eina kavua b'hen yoser mimayas, and he doesn't have a stake in the animal more than the money, ikalameimar lo yitin lo behemis alamayas. The Kohen could say, nobody told you to give him animals, give him money. In other words, you want exempt the B'chor from Kedusha, you don't have a right for that. He doesn't care about the animal, he cares about the money. It's the price. So if you could give him money instead of it, so it's basically just a form of monetary taxes. It translates into animals, but the idea is money. So maybe the Kohen could say, this is not called a partnership in the animal, it's called a taxes obligation. You could pay it with an animal, you could pay it with money. Since he didn't take it yet, he didn't take the B'chor. Obviously, if he took the B'chor, he took the B'chor. And money you could give him. So then you would say that you're chayev. Ki kami boyalan, the question is, once again, if you can't compensate it with money, in other words, the taxes on the animal itself, what would be the halacha? Are the offspring pater from B'chor or not pater from B'chor? Amalahu, Rava says P'tura. You're exempt. Why are you exempt? Because even though it's possible that the king will take another animal and not the B'chor, but we look at the B'chor as something that this Gentile has a stake in it. He's like a partner in it. Even though he may leave this, he may take another one. But since 10% of your entire farm, of all the animals that are going to be born, belong to him, and if he would want, he could take the B'chor. It's not like he made a condition with you that B'chor is off limits. So the B'chor only belongs to you. There's no such a thing. He may, yes, he may not. And you can't compensate with money. So therefore, Rava says that this is like an ubar, a fetus of a non-Jew, or at least partnered with a non-Jew. What's exempt from B'chor? Vatanya. The question is, how could Rava say something? We have a brayse, chayevas. Royal taxes, you're mechuyev in B'chor. Now it doesn't say what we're talking about, but the Gemara understood that we're talking about animals. So he says, Hasam the Matzo Masala clay. You could explain simply that Bryce is talking about in a case where the king allows you to compensate him with money. Since he allows you to compensate him with money, as we explained in such a case, you would be obligated to give the B'chor to the Kohen. This is the story the way it happened according to one version. Ikedamri, there was another version. Amar Rava said, Behemis arnuna p'turim in B'chor. Behemoth arnuna, an animal that's subject to royal taxes, is potter from chayre. Afal gav the matzi masala. According to this version, Rava was actually much more lenient. Even though you could compensate him with money and you don't have to pay the taxes through the animal itself, as long as you didn't, the taxes applies to the animals, and this is considered yad nochri be'emtza. Rashi says, Afal gav the matzi masalakle, the chol kama the loy salkai, because as long as you didn't, yadoi shaycha bebehemus. You could say his hand is at stake. He has equity. He has equity in all the animals. Yes. If you come with money, will he take it? Yeah. But the mass is on the behemoth. So according to the first version, the taina is that it's not considered equity in the animals. He has equity in your property. But the second version is even if you could pay him with money, since the mass applies to the behemoth, so it's called he has a partnership. He has equity in these animals, and therefore every one of these animals that were born this year, including the b'chor, whether it's from a cow or from a sheep or from a goat, is a shutfus with the king, and since he's not Jewish, so therefore you're potter from b'chor completely.
Is that money common that you used it for the pig in?
Yeah. Says Rava further, Isas arnuna, when it comes to royal taxes of dough, remember, the king has a royal taxes for your animals, he also has a royal taxes for your grain. Got to pay taxes on everything. So when it comes to Isas arnuna, the dough that you didn't give taxes yet, let's say 10% of your grain, so now you have barley or spelt or whatever it is, or wheat, and you have to give taxes, chayeves bechala. Here you're obligated to give challah. Afal gav l'matzah masala klei. Even in a case where you can't compensate him with money, which is very strange. Why? Let's remember what this case is. The halacha is, there's a mitzvah sasim in Torah, that if I need dough, if I mix flour and water of any one of the 5 types of grain, usually attributed to wheat and barley and spelt and oats and rye, growing in Eretz Yisrael, if the dough is of a certain size, it can't be a very small size, but if dough is a certain significant size, the volume of 43 and 1/5 of an egg, so the chiyuv is to take part of this dough or the bread that I bake from this dough and give it to the kohen. This is called challah. This is the mitzvah of challah in addition to the truma that you have to give to the kohen before it became dough, before you grinded it into flour, when it was still stalks or kernels. This is something else. This is a mitzvah essay that you have to give challah. What happens if you don't give challah from a dough? It's called tevel. You're not allowed to eat it, just like you're not allowed to eat grain from which you did not give truma. The dough of a non-Jew is potter from challah. The pasuk says, Reishis, Arisai Seichem. Your dough you have to give truma. What about dough where there's a partnership again? You and I own a field. Me and a non-Jew own a field. And we have all this grain now, and we have dough that comes from this grain. So each piece of dough, there's a partnership between me and a non-Jew. So here it depends on the size. If we would split it up into 2, and my size is the size that's mechuyev and challah, then I have to give challah from it. But if we would split it into 2, my part would not be mechuyev and challah, would be too small. So then we learn out that I'm potter from challah. Okay. That's the halacha. So Rava says, what happens if I have a royal tax that I have to give from the dough? If I will give this part to the king,
You're really giving it from the dough.
yes, very good. If I will give this part to the king, I will not have the shear of dough that's mechuyev and challah. Nonetheless, it's chayev and challah. That's what Rashi says. Isas arnuna chayevas. But afal gav the isas nachri ptura. Even though the dough of a non-Jew is exempt, v'oichel Yisrael b'loy challah, and a Jew can eat it without challah, do arisoi seichem ksiv, zu chayeves. This dough is obligated to give challah, but why? If I'm a partner with a non-Jew in a dough, let's say we both buy a piece of dough together, we own it together, right? If it's not big enough that my own part is chayev and challah, the whole thing becomes pater from challah, and I can eat it. We could bake it, and I can eat it gesundheit, and my family can eat it. So what's the issue here? Why is isa sarnun and chayev b'challah? So maybe you could say because you can compensate it with money. So since you can compensate it with money, like we explained before, he doesn't have a stake in the dough. But Rava said even if you can't compensate it with money, which means he does have a stake in this dough, and he's going to want it. So what's the justification? My time, why are we so stringent? Why is it so stringent? Why don't we consider the obligation of taxes as a partnership? And even if you're going to tell me, oh, he may not take from this dough, he may take from another dough. I understand. That was the same case by Bhai. He may not take this animal, but the fact is, he has a hand in all of the doughs. He could take from any dough, and that's considered a partnership. And if he takes from it, it's going to be not kashir. The answer is, behema is lekala, issa las lekala. Animal has a coil. It's public knowledge. When it comes to a dough, less lekala. It's not public knowledge. What does this mean? So Rashi says, in Isis Arnuna Chayeves, let's continue. The less lekala. It's not famous. Somebody in your kitchen sees that you're eating dough without challah. By a behemoth, it has a coil. So when the Brisa says you're chayev in the dough, you're chayev is talking about a dough. It's not talking about a behemoth. According to the second version, where Rava says that a behemoth is always potter. What is Rashi telling us? When it comes to behemoths, when it comes to animals, it's public knowledge. Everybody knows that this person has a farm. It's public knowledge. Everybody sees it, and everybody knows that the government imposes taxes, and if you have a farm, you can't hide your animals and confine them. They're not going to be able to live. They have to be in the open. They have to graze. So it's public knowledge, and therefore it's public knowledge that you own this, and therefore it's public knowledge that you have to give 10% for taxes. So everybody knows that the melech is a partner in your flock, and therefore we're not afraid that somebody's going to say, oh, this Jew doesn't give a b'char, because it's very obvious why he doesn't give a carbon b'char to the kohen, because the king owns part of it. However, when it comes to baking a dough, less lekala. Not every yenta and yachna knows that I'm sitting and baking a dough in my house, that the government knows exactly about what doughs I have in my house, what doughs I don't have in my house. So therefore, you can hide it from the taxation of the king. So therefore, even in a case where they do know, and he's imposing taxes on me, a lot of people don't know, and they might think that I'm eating tevel. I'm eating dough without challah, because it's less lekala, it doesn't have a coil. Nobody knows what's going on, so when they see me taking a dough and baking it and eating it and not separating challah, the guests in my house might assume that what? That I'm not taking challah, even though the truth is that I don't have to, because I have a partnership with the malchus.
Challah is much easier to take, meaning you add a little bit, but the sheer challah is, let's say 5 pounds, you add 5.10.
Ein chanami.
But you have challah on that.
Ein chanami, the Rashash. You're right. This is one way of learning it, that basically people can escape it much more. They can escape this taxes much more. And sometimes if your king was a tyrant and a thief and a ratzchen you tried, and people could starve, so they tried to do this. But even if you're not, and you're potter, less lekala doesn't have a coil. In other words, the government, the king may not know about it, and therefore you may escape it, and therefore people will think that you're actually not giving taxes, and it's your dough mamish, and therefore you push it not taking challah. The Rashash adds, I just want to say the Rashash adds that generally the king didn't take taxes from the dough. It's a little awkward. He would take taxes from the grain. However, if you didn't give from the grain, then they could take from the dough. So therefore, when he took taxes from the grain, once you made a dough, that dough was already yours because you already gave taxes, right? So this situation where he didn't take taxes from the grain and he's coming to take taxes from the dough, it's not obvious to anybody that part of this is going to go for taxes because you're supposed to give from the grain. You just didn't. And the IRS monitored you and they said, wait, okay, we're coming to take the dough. So in this case, if you don't take challah, somebody's going to think you're mamish not taking challah because you're already supposed to give taxes and this challah is yours. This dough is yours. The fact that you're not doing it is because you're not makbid on the mitzvah of challah, and therefore we don't allow this to happen.
So there's no more sign because they know if the IRS is coming for the dough that they missed it.
Right. In other words, if it would have a coil, if everybody would know that this dough is subjected to taxes, then it wouldn't be a problem. But since they don't know, because they think that I already gave taxes from the grain, so therefore this dough is just my dough. I already gave my taxes from the grain. Now I have dough in my house. This is completely mine. There's no partnership here, right? And they see I'm not giving challah. You're in my house. You're not giving challah. What do you think? I don't give challah.
Isn't that more sign then?
Yeah, that's what it is. Even though I'm takel now, I don't have to give challah because he didn't take taxes yet. You're right. That's the pshat. Lesle kola means it doesn't have a coil. What says it doesn't have a coil? People don't know that this is subjected to taxes because usually you're supposed to give taxes from the grain. There's two types on how to say lesle kola.
What is it the king is a Jew?
Then this doesn't apply. We're talking about a non-Jewish king.
The Romans. Come for the bushels over
The Romans, obvious the Romans, yeah.
grain. Go for the grain.
If I'm taka partner with a non-Jew in a piece of dough, yeah, then taka I don't have to give challah. But in this case, it's a little different because it's taxes for the king.
Is it a partnership in each small part of the dough? Each piece of the dough has a 50-50, or is it 50-50 of the entire amount? It doesn't make a difference.
Well, no, it's very important because if I'm a partner with a non-Jew in a dough, and together, both of our doughs together, both of our
So the shutfus is in the dough.
the shutfus is in the dough. There would be a shir challah, I would be potter, right? But if in my part of the shutfus there would be a sufficient shir for challah, then I have to be mafresh challah in my part. We're not going to be eating this dough together, from your mouth into my mouth. At some point, we're going to split it, right?
The low end of the
Yeah. Huh?
bakery.
Like a bakery, yeah. Yeah. So if there's a shir, chayev and challah, in my shutfus itself, in my part itself, then I'm a chayev and challah. So obviously the question here is that even if when the malchus comes and takes its part, there will not remain a shir. Still, I'm chayev and challah. That's the chiddush.
Maar je had toen als meisjesschutjes, zo'n papa met toen, de wijze schutten.
Weiter. Ah?
Peter Hamar is still today the thing that you're high. In Israel, for instance, even though there's a tax, but it's
Jews.
Jews.
If it's a Jewish king, it's different, yeah.
So after the government takes, you're going to have a chiyuv to take challah still?
If there's a shear.
Obviously, there's a
No,
shir.
I'm saying that out of the challah that remains, there's no duty to take challah because we were talking about the amount. That
Right.
small.
Right. Tana Rabbanon, the rabbis taught, Dachri, if you have a non-Jew, shenichnas lachatzeder shel Yisrael, he enters into the courtyard of a Jew, uptseikoi biyadoi, and he has a dough of chametz in his hand. Parshas, a practical situation. A neighbor comes in to say hi, to give you a gift, to deliver something that came to his house in the mail. It's the middle of Pesach, and he comes in with a pie of pizza. Or he comes in even better, eating a pizza. Chametz b'tzeika biyadoi. Ein zakuk levayer. You don't have to say, Reb Goy, do me a favor, I'm going to come meet you outside, stay outside of the house. In other words, you don't have a responsibility to get rid of this chametz from your house. You don't have to ask him to please, let's go speak outside, let's not speak in the house, because I don't want chametz in my house. This is a very practical halacha, which is based on the whole sugya before. I'm allowed to have chametz in my house if it doesn't belong to a Jew. So he comes in eating his pizza, or he comes in with a pie of Domino pizza. I don't have any responsibility to say, ooh, outside of the house, it's Pesach, I don't want... Practically, you may want to be careful because you don't want pizza in your kitchen sink for obvious reasons on Pesach. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about mitzad lo yirah. Obviously, you don't want him to put the pizza in the couch, and then your kid is going to sit down and maybe eat the Domino pizza, which is a chash not only Pesach, but also a whole year. But the point is, there's no chiyuv to get rid of this chametz, levayer, to practically to say, please, let's go out of the house because I'm not allowed to have this in my house. Why? Because it says lo yirah lecha chametz, lo yirah lecha. You're not allowed to see chametz that is for yourself, chametz that's reserved for yourself, meaning chametz that belongs to you, which is reserved for you, not chametz which is reserved for somebody else because it's non-Jewish. Hifkido yatzloi. The Brisa continues, and this is really a summation, practical summation from before. What happens if he doesn't enter into your courtyard or your home? Chatzera means your courtyard or your home with chametz. Rather, hifkido yatzloi. He deposits the chametz by you. That's a very different story. He didn't come in with his pizza or his bagel or his cheesecake. He's giving it to you as a pikadon, and we're talking about with achrayus, with responsibility. He deposits it by you. I want you to be the custodian for my chametz. As Rashi says, they don't tell you to take him out of the house, to ask him to leave. And you assume the achrayus, as the Gemara will explain. Zakuk levayer. Then the halacha is you have to eliminate it from your house on Pesach. If the guy comes to you and says, "Here, this is a deposit, and it's with responsibility," and then Pesach comes. This was, let's say, a month before Pesach, and Pesach comes. Zakuk levayer. You're not allowed to have this chametz in your house. You have to give it back. You have to give it back to this man. And if or take off achrayus, or burn it and compensate him. You could burn it and you'll pay him back. You took achrayus, you'll pay him back. But the chametz is not yours. It's not in the house anymore. Yichid loy bayis, a new situation. What if you designated a house for him? What does it mean, yichid loy bayis? Rashi says, keloymar, loy kibloy alav. He didn't accept responsibility. He tells him, harei abayis lefanecha. Here, this house is in front of you. Hanach ba'achas min azaviyas. Here, go. I have a big house. Go find yourself a corner, yeah? There's a locker there, there's a shelf there, there's a cabinet there. Choose a corner and put it there. Rashi says that's pshat yichid loy bayis. Yichid loy bayis means, basically, I'm not talking about the chametz. I'm not telling you, here, leave me the chametz, I'll take care of it. I'm basically showing you a place in my house and I'm saying, listen, I let you use my house to store your chametz. So Rashi says, this means he's not being mekabel achrayus. Ein zakuk levayer. Then you do not have to eliminate this chametz from the house. Shenemar, the pasuk says, lo yimotzei. Chametz should not be found. Frag Gemara, my kamar. What does the lo yimotzei have to do with this heter? On the contrary, lo yimotzei means you're not allowed to have chametz in your house. Here you're telling me that if he comes in with dough into my house, I could leave him there. If he deposits the chametz and I take responsibility, I cannot leave it there, Pesach. But if I designate for him a place in the house and I let him put it there, then I could leave it there. Shenemar, lo yimotzei. Where does lo yimotzei prove this point? My kamar. What's pshat? You're giving me a heter that you're allowed to do it, and then you tell me lo yimotzei, you're not allowed to have chametz. The answer is Amar of Papa Areshakai. You're right. This pasuk lo yimotzei is not referring to the last clause. It's referring to the earlier clause. Vayechi ka'amar hifkido yatzloi. If he deposits by you chametz with responsibility, zakuk levayer, you have to eliminate it. Shenema lo yimotzei, because it says lo yimotzei, and it doesn't say lo yimotzei lochem bevatechem. It shouldn't be found for you in your home, meaning the chametz that's reserved for you. It says lo yimotzei, any chametz in your home. So what did we learn from here? That even non-Jewish chametz, if you took responsibility, you're assuming responsibility for this pikadon, and you're not allowed to have. So Rav Papa says the lo yimotzei is not referring to the last clause of the Brisa. It's referring to the previous one, where it says you're not allowed to have it. Chayav levay. Rav Ashi says la'olam ha'sefer. No, that's not true. The pasuk that the Tana brings actually refers to the last clause of the Brisa. It says you're allowed to have it. This is how you have to explain. Yichid loy bayis, if you designate a corner in your home, a section of your home to this non-Jew to put his chametz, and you're not taking responsibility, as we explained. If you say clearly you're taking responsibility, then I don't care if you designate a corner according to this explanation. But if it's clear you're not taking responsibility, Rashi clearly says you didn't take responsibility. Ein zakuk levayer. You don't have to eliminate it. Why? Shenemar, on this he says lo yimotzei bevatechem. It shouldn't be found in your home. Vaha, and this chametz lavdi dehu. It's not considered his. The nachri kikama ayil, because when the non-Jew enters chametz into this house, lebeisa the nafshi kama ayil, he put it into his home and the non-Jew didn't assume any responsibility. It says, Sa'ar lo yimatzeh bivatechem. It shouldn't be found in your home. Here you designated a place for him. That place is like his place where he could keep the chametz. You're not taking responsibility, so therefore there's no connection to you. It's not like your chametz. This chametz, therefore, is not considered your chametz. When he brings in chametz to this house, it's like he's bringing it into his own home. It's not bevatechem. If you would take achrayas, that would be different. But since he's putting it into his little corner of the home that you gave him permission. It wasn't a theft. You gave him permission. Almost like you rented it. Let's say you rent somebody a corner. You didn't rent it. You give him permission. But it's the same idea. I let you use a closet in my house, a drawer. I say, go to the drawer, put the chametz. It's almost like I'm renting you that drawer, even if it's not for money. But the point is, you have rights for the next 8 days or the next month or the next 6 months to keep your mashke in that drawer, put your stuff there. Gesundheit. So Milo, it's not lo yimatzeh bevatechem. It's not considered my house. When the guy goes in there, l'beisa de nafshika mile. It's like he's going into his own house. Rashi says, Maika Amar Hechi Yalef Milo Yimatzeh Lo Olam HaSeifa V'Lo Yimatzeh Mashma. When it says Lo Yimatzeh, it means Hamatzui B'Yadcha L'Chol Chafetzecha. Lo Yimatzeh means it shouldn't be found. Yimatzeh also means available. Matzoi means it's available, it's common, it's accessible. So he says, Lo yimatzeh means hamatzoi b'yadcha l'chol chafetzecha. It's available to you for any desire. Hainu de kabel alei achrayis d'avekididei, which would mean if you accepted responsibility, which the halacha considers it as though it's yours. When something is mine, it's available to me for whatever I need. If I have a sweater, I could wear it, I could sell it, I could give it to somebody, I could use it for whatever I want. It's available to me. When it's a pikad and it's yours, it's not available to me. But if I take achrayis, if I assume responsibility, then what do we say? Then it's kididei. It's as though even though it's not mine, if a taka gets lost, I have to pay for it. But even before it gets lost, I assume responsibility for it. I'm taking care of it like mine, so the Torah considers it kididei. So therefore it says lo yimatzeh, it has to be matzui etzlecha, l'chol chafetzecha. So Rashi teaches, what does that mean? It means it has to be either yours or like yours if you're makabel achrayas, because you're taking responsibility, even though it's taka not yours, but you're taking responsibility. Here you did not take responsibility on it, and instead you told him that he could keep it in your house, but you did not take responsibility for it, and therefore you are good to go. So what is Reb Ashi teaching us? Reb Ashi is teaching us that the only isur to have chametz is chametz hamatzui loi. It's accessible to you for your needs, which means either it's yours or it's deemed like yours because you took achrayus. But if you tell him, here is my house, put it wherever you want, or I tell you even where to put it or find a place, it's not my achrayus, and therefore you're allowed to have this chametz in your home, because it's not a gather of yimatzeh. So Rabbi Ashi learns this from lo yimatzeh bivatechem. In other words, in your house, you have an isur lo yimatzeh. But if I rent it or I give a part of my house to the guy, he says this isur doesn't apply because this is not called matzoi. The chametz in the rented home, so to speak, in the home that's used, or the part of it that's used by the guy, is not considered matzoi because I'm not taking responsibility for it. I'm not taking responsibility for it. But if it's in my house, what do we mean it's in my house? This is also in my house, but I gave this part to him and I said, here, use the drawer, but I'm not connected to this. I'm not going to look after this drawer. That's not considered bevatechem, and therefore he is good. Rev Papa didn't have to learn this limud of lo yimatzeh bevatechem because he holds that what? He holds that it's a svara, that if somebody says this house is yours, he's not a shomer, he wasn't makabel achrayus, and therefore if he wasn't makabel achrayus, it's not his. Reb Ashi though has this haisafa, this extra vart of lo yimatzeh bevatechem. It's not considered basi. Yeah.
So technically speaking, he can find a bottle of mashra, drink it, so he will be over on Hummus, but not over on Vayechi. Technically speaking, right? So, but if he ate, how did he ate without time?
If you want to know if the Jew, middle of Pesach, goes over to the drawer, takes out the mashke and drinks it, So he was over on Achilas Chametz, but not on Bayira Bayimotze. Okay.
But if he ate it, the answer, the Hetzeröver is that...
I mean, by taking it, probably the status changed. Shlichus Yad. He stole it. He stole it, so it became his, right? He has to pay for it now. So yeah, I don't. He probably be over on Bayira too. That moment when he picks it up.
So that means that that technicality doesn't work. No.
So I don't know if it's going to work, right? Says the Gemara, "L'meimre deschiris kanya." Are you going to learn from here that something that's rented, as long as he rents it, it's considered belonging to the renter? In other words, the object that he rents, or that which he rents, whatever he rents, is considered his. Do we say that it's the renter's because he's using it, or it's the landlord because it's ultimately going to come back to him? As we'll see, V'hatnan, we learned a Mishnah. The Mishnah says in Maseches Avodah Zarah, Av b'makom she'amru lahasker, even in a place where they allow a Jew to rent out a home to an idol worshiper, loyla beis dira amru. It's never for him to live there. We're talking about here an idol worshiper, and if you give him your home to rent, he's going to bring in his getchkas there, his idols there, and a Jew is not allowed to have idolatry in his home. So therefore, even those who say you're allowed to rent to an akum, to an ovid avodah zarah, it's not. It's for storage of animals, or storage of objects or items, but not to live there. Now, what is the background behind this Mishnah? The Torah says, "V'loy sechanim." I'm not allowed to sell real estate to an idolater, loy sechanim, to an akum in Eretz Yisrael. Comes Reb Meir, and Reb Meir says that Midrabanan you can't even rent fields or homes in Eretz Yisrael to an akum. Why? Because you may come to sell it. But say Syria, what we would call Syria, which is a different type of sanctity, it's not Eretz Yisrael. So the Chachamim only didn't allow you to rent fields because then they're not mechuyev in the mitzvahs hatluyas baris. They won't do trumas and meisters because it's being used by non-Jews. But you could rent homes. That's the view of Reb Meir. Reb Yossi holds that even in Eretz Yisrael you're allowed to rent homes. Reb Meir is very stringent in Eretz Yisrael. You can't rent homes. You could rent outside of Eretz Yisrael, even in Syria. Not fields, but homes. Reb Yossi says, no. The issue is selling, but you can rent a home in Eretz Yisrael. It's not a problem. Says the Mishnah that even in those places where you're allowed to sell a home to an idol worshiper, either in Eretz Yisrael according to Reb Yossi, or in Syria or other countries according to Reb Meir, it does not mean a residence, because he's going to bring in his avodah zarah. Then you're not allowed avodah zarah in your home. It means he can use it for a stable or for other things. Not a place where he's going to bring in avodah idol worship. But if you believe that a rented home is considered the acquisition of the renter as long as he rents it, when he brings in avodah zarah to the house, he's bringing it into his own house. When he gives you back the house after the lease is over, then it's considered your home. You have to get rid of the avodah zarah. But as long as I rent a house, that house is considered my house. So if you're telling me lo yimotze b'vatechem does not include giving a guy a right, let's say I give him my basement, and I say, put your chametz in your basement. And that's not considered batechem, because it's like a rented place, so to speak, wherever, even a closet, even a drawer. That drawer is considered his drawer, so it's his house, so it's not my house anymore, because I wasn't Makabel Achrayis. That's what Rashi said. You're saying a whole new yesod here, really? So, why can you rent him a house in Eretz Yisrael? Or anywhere where you're allowed to rent, let him bring in avodas kechavim. It's his house. It's not my house. True, I own the house. He can't sell the house. True, it's going to go back to me, but for this year that he's renting it, it's his. And for the Gemara, so the question is, we see that schirus is not koina. It's not considered his. It's still considered my home, and therefore the avodah zarah that he brings in is my home. So how can I designate a home, a place in my home for his chametz? Reb Ashi said that from Batechem I learned that if I tell you, here's a place in your house for your chametz, I don't have to get rid of it from Pesach. In other words, the place that I lend to the non-Jew to put his chametz is not considered my home, it's considered his home. It's basically like you would rent a closet in my house. You know, people do it all the time in Brooklyn, they rent garages. Yeah, they rent closets, they rent garages, there's so little space, yeah? So he rents I say, put it in the garage. or go to the garage. It's like he's renting the garage. So it's saying it's not my home, it's his home. That's a gewaldige chiddush of Reb Ashi. It's considered mamish his home. So b'meila, the Gemara says if that's the case, we have a big problem because this doesn't make sense. The Mishnah says clearly, schirus loikanya. You're allowed to live there, you're allowed to use it, but it's considered my home. It's not considered your home. That's why I'm not allowed to rent a residence to live for an oived kechavim, because when he brings in idolatry, it's considered me bringing it into my house, even though he's bringing it in, but he's bringing it into my house, and it says, Loi savi say eva el beisecha. The Torah says in Dvarim, Perik Zayin, you're not allowed to bring an abomination, which is idolatry, into your house. And by the way, this question is even according to Rav Papa, because Rav Papa says, the reason I let you have the chametz in that corner, I tell you, put the chametz in that corner, I don't mind. And we say it's fine, because I'm not assuming responsibility. I didn't tell you to bring the chametz into my house. Right? I'm basically telling you, put it away somewhere. If I tell you to bring it into my house, it's a form of Kabbalah Sachrayas, like, I'll take care of it. So this depends on if you say Schiris Kanya. If you say that the place that I rent out is considered your home, so then when I tell you, here, go take the garage, it's almost like I'm telling you, put it in your house. That's not Kabbalah Sachrayas. But if you say Schiris Loikanya, when you rent, it's considered mine, it's not considered yours, so it's still considered mine. So then, right, it would be like you tell me, can I leave the mashka with you? And I say, of course, put it here in my house, which is a form of Kabbalah Sachrayas. So l'cha'ira, when your Gemara just says, yichid loy bayis, he says, put it away in a particular place in the house. I let you, as Rashi says, he tells him, harei habayis lefanecha, the house is you could put it in one of the corners, right? Is that Kabbalah Sachrayas or not? If you say Schirus Kanya, Schirus is Koina, then it's not Kabbalah Sachrayas. It's like telling you, oh, find your house and put it there. I'm giving you in my house a place that I'm calling your house. But if it's still considered my house, it's like inviting it into my house, which would be a form of Kabbalah Sachrayas. So this would be a question even according to Rav Papa, who says it's all about Achrayas. So the Gemara says the truth is it's not Koina. But Shiny Hacha here is different. You know why? Let's say it's taka considered your house. I don't mind. I gave him a drawer, the garage, and it's considered my house, and that's why by Avodah Zarah I'm not allowed to rent it as a residence. That's true. But shiny hachi here is different. You know why? The afke rachmana beloshen lo yimatze. The Torah employs the term lo yimatze. What does lo yimatze mean? Misha matzui biyatcha. The chametz that is accessible to you. Yatza zeh she'enoi matze biyatcha. Versus this chametz which is not accessible to you. Meaning, says Rashi, she'ein matzi biyatcha, sharei oisa zavis mesura lenachri. That corner is given over to the non-Jew. In other words, the place where the chametz is, you gave over to the non-Jew to use it. So therefore, even if it's considered my house, but it would be like I'm telling my friend, put in the chametz into your home, and I'm not being makabel achrayas. The main point here is that I did not assume responsibility for the chametz. Because I didn't assume responsibility for the chametz, even though it's still considered my home, because schirus loikanya, you're allowed to use it, but it's still considered my home, as we see by Avodah Zarah. But since the Torah uses the word lo yimatze, what does lo yimatze mean? It has to be matzui biyatcha. Chametz that's accessible to you. What do we mean chametz that's accessible to you? Chametz, if basically you told the guy, here, put the chametz in a particular corner, so that chametz you gave over, you told him, put it in a particular place, and that corner is given over to him for him to use. This is not called matzui. Because it's not called matzui, so therefore it's fine and you don't have to eliminate the chametz. So even though the chametz is in your house, since you were not makabel achrayas, according to this interpretation, you did not assume responsibility. How do we know you did not assume responsibility? As Rashi says, when you told him yichid loy bayis, you told him, put it in one of the corners, but it's your responsibility, it's not my responsibility. So even though it's still in my house, but it's not in the geder, since I didn't assume responsibility, this is not considered my chametz, it's considered your chametz. And we say that even though it's considered my home, but since the Torah uses the word lo yimatze, so the issur is only on chametz that's matzui biyadi. What do we mean matzoi biyadcha? Matzoi biyadcha means it's accessible, it's available to you. This chametz in the house that is rented or given over to the guy is not matzoi because it's given over to him to use, and therefore it's not considered kabbalah sachrayis, and I'm not over on this chametz. It's basically where kabbalah sachrayis would mean I assume responsibility for it, and it's considered my chametz, even though technically it's not my chametz, but basically it's considered mine, and therefore you need this concept of yichid loy bayis. It shouldn't be matzoi. It shouldn't be matzoi to you because you give him a special place to put away the chametz.
How do you deal with the shared office space?
Shared
office space. You rent to a guy and it runs out in the middle of Chalamoid. It runs out the. If you rent.
Good. If you don't have a chrayas for his chametz, it's good.
Not right, but it's your place. After let's say third day of Chalamoid, it's your place already. You have your chametz is there that he left. You can't sell it before Pesach because it's not yours.
It's also like, I don't know, it's also like if a girl walks in the middle of the yontif to your house with a slice of pizza and decides to leave it there. With mafka, it's your shoes.
No, there it's a shared office space.
Even if he
your price, the place is still your price. You can't sell it, you can't be about it before because it wasn't yours. Once he leaves,
if you take a chrayas for his chametz, you have an issue.
Cover it.
It's not there. It's not, again, it's an office space that we work kind of place. That you could rent by day, you could rent by.
Yeah.
So he rented it. He had it for the first 3 days of basically, then he's out. And he left his company.
So basically, what is Rashi telling us? What is Rashi telling us? That if yichid loy bayis, which means, as Rashi says, I did not accept achrayas. Rather, I put the achrayas on you, and you see it from my words because I said, here, take one of the corners of my house. In other words, I'm not taking responsibility for it. Then we say, Einoi zakuk levayer. You're good because there was no kabbalah achrayas. Shenema lo yimatzei bevatechem. It shouldn't be found in your home, and even though it's considered my home, because even if you're a renter, it's still considered my home. The chametz is in my home. Nonetheless, this is not considered matzui. What do we mean, Rashi? Like Rashi said, what's before matzui? He said, matzui is matzui biyatzcha l'chol chafetzecha. It's accessible to me for all my needs because it's mine, or I was makabel achrayas. But this is not matzui, and this corner is given over to the nachri. What does it mean it's given over to the nachri? I basically said, here, take care of it. It's yours, even though legally the place is mine. But the chametz is given over to the nachri, so it's not considered matzui. It's not considered matzui. It's not really, it's not accessible to me to use because it's not my achrayas, right? It's not my achrayas. There's no relationship to me. It's your chametz. You happen to put it in my house with my permission. It's fine. It's not considered, even though it's found in my house, but it doesn't go into the gather of lo yimatzei bevatechem. Why? Because it's not mine. That's the ikar, right? We learned before lo yirah lecha. This is not mine. And it says lo yimatzei bevatechem. It has to be matzui. Matzui means, interesting that it's accessible. The Rashi teaches the yimatzei means, again, it has to be accessible to me, that I should be able to use it, that this is not a gather of yimatzei, where if makabel achrayas, then, since it's far, doesn't say lecha, it's considered mine. Okay. I just want to bring out here that there's one other major shita, which is far more lenient. And if you'll take a look in Tosefos, yichid loy bayis, just take a look. This is quite fascinating. Pirush hakuntrus de loy kibel alav achrayas. He didn't take responsibility. Elo amale haraya bayis lefanecha. The house is yours. Put it where you want. Okay. In other words, I don't even have to know where it is, by the way. Harabayis lefanecha basically is telling you, don't even tell me where it is. I'm not interested. You know why I'm not interested? Because I'm not taking responsibility. That's how Rashi learns. If so, why does the Beis say yichid loy bayis? Even if not yichid loy bayis. Even if he says, here, put it down, but I'm not taking achrayas. It's good. Why does it have to be yichid loy bayis? And at the end, he wants to say that schiris kanya, that schiris that Schiris basically makes it his. Why is the Gemara looking for that? The Gemara is trying to say that it's not your house anymore. According to Rashi, who cares? Your house, not your house. The main thing is achrayas or no achrayas. That's the main thing. Why does Rashi say the main thing is you weren't makabel achrayas? You weren't makabel achrayas. Who cares if yichid lebayis or not yichid lebayis? He said, put it on the couch. I'm not taking achrayas. What's the? And then the Gemara wants to say it's because it's like a rental. It's like he owns it. And the Gemara says no, he doesn't own it. Pirush Rabbeinu Tam da'afilu ba'achrayas mayri. The chiddush of yichid lebayis is even I take responsibility. And that's why you need lo yimatzeh. In other words, if you say you were makabel achrayas, then you already know that you're allowed to have it because it's not l'cha. Here the chiddush is you assume responsibility. You give him a place in the house. You say, this is your place. It's yours. You could use it. And I'm going to be achroi. I'm going to watch this house. I'm going to make sure nobody gets there. Because you gave him his own house, so to speak. So we learn out from lo yimatzeh bevatechem. It doesn't have to be in your house. Or at the end, the Gemara says from lo yimatzeh. It's not matzui lecha. It's not accessible. Anu limud. The lo chashiv matzui. It's not considered accessible. Kiven sheyichid lebayis because you gave him a designated place. But Rav Papa Islam is svara. Rav Papa doesn't even need a pasuk. Rav Papa holds that it's logical. Kiven sheyichid lebayis. Since you designated a place, have a keilu kibel alav achrayus al chemtzoy shal nachri bebeisor shal nachri. It would be like I assume responsibility for a chametz of a non-Jew in the house of a non-Jew. In other words, let's say I have a neighbor who's a non-Jew. He's leaving stuff in his house, chametz, and he says, I'm leaving and I'm afraid. Could you guard this house? Could you make sure? And you say, fine. Are you allowed to do that on Pesach? He says, of course. It's his chametz in his house. That doesn't make the chametz mine. If the chametz is in my house and I'm a kabbalah achrayas, that's a lethal combination. It's in my house, right? And I'm assuming achrayas, that's considered mine. But if the chametz is in his house and I'm a kabbalah achrayas and it's his chametz, then it's not a problem. So that's the chiddush of the Gemara. Yichid loy bayis. When I designate a place in the house and I say, go take a drawer, go take a closet, go take a garage, that's now considered your home. And even though schirus loy kanya, but since it says lo yimatzeh, yimatzeh means it shouldn't be accessible to you. Since you made a special corner for him, it's not hanging around, you're putting it here, tomorrow you're putting it there. It's a place where it's going to be designated because you gave him that place for him to use, and you're not going to use it. You're not going to go and change it and say, I need this drawer, I'm going to put it in a closet. Then it's a problem. Since you're so that's considered as though it's his home. You're taking responsibility for the chametz of a guy in the house of a guy. Even though it's in your house, but you designated a place, it's not considered matzui. So the lo yimatzeh says that it's not matzui, you're allowed to have it. So this is a gevaldik word. Rashi says yichid lebayis is simply another way of saying you weren't makabel achrayas. Rabbeinu Tam holds no. It's a new halacha. You were makabel achrayas, and there's a special limit from lo yimatzeh that you're allowed to have that chametz in your house, even though you're makabel achrayas. Why? Because you designated a special place for him, and that place is not accessible to you because you're letting him use it. Even though a renter is not considered an acquirer, that it's his house, it's still your house, like we see by Avodah Zarah. But nonetheless, because you designated this place for him to use, and you gave him the right to use it, it's not considered accessible to you. It's like if I let you use a closet in my house, it's like you go into your wife's closet, it's sakanas nefashos if you start playing around there. Why? You may own the closet. I gave it to you to use. It's not accessible to me. What do I mean? Of course, legally it's accessible to me. I mean, I could call you and I could say I need this drawer. But the point is, I made an agreement. I let you use this place, or I let you choose a place, and I'm respecting it. That's not considered matzah, even though I was makabel achrayas. Just like if it would be in your house and it would be your chametz, a guy's house and a guy's chametz. I'm not. Over and by your rabbi, your matzo, you say, oh, but you're responsible for it. Well, so what? I'm responsible for it. So what? It's your house and your chametz. If it's my house and I'm a kabbalah achrayas, right? He leaves it in my kitchen. I just say, you know what? Put it in the kitchen. I'll already deal with it. You'll put it here. I'll put it there. That's already different because it's accessible to me and I'm a kabbalah achrayas. But if it's one without the other, if you're makabel achrayas, but it's not accessible to you because yichid lebayis, Rabbeinu Tam has a big chiddush that pshat in Gemara, eino zakuk levayer, because it says lo yimatzeh, and Rav Papa holds that it's a svara just like it would be his own house. Rashi does not learn that way. Rashi clearly learns from this Gemara that what? If you're makabel achrayas, I don't care where in the house it is. Even if I designate a place in my house, in my domain, and I'm makabel achrayas, what's the halacha? I have to get rid of that chametz. Huh? Yeah, if the guy's house, then everybody. No, still you would be fine. If it's my house, since Schirus is not Chayna, that would be the case. So in other words, Rashi, this is the Shitta of Rashi, it's the Shitta of the Baal HaShe'iltos, it's also the Shitta of the Rif and the Rambam. How do we know? Because the Rambam in Hilchos Chametz and Matzah doesn't put in the case of Yichid Loy Bayis. The Rambam, from the Rambam, you have to learn not only what he writes, also what he doesn't write. He ignores this piece of Gemara that Yichid Loy Bayis Ein Zakuk Levayer. Why doesn't the Rambam put it in? If you designate a place in the house, you don't have to get rid of it. Obviously, the Rambam holds it's just an extension of the Halacha of Achrayas. Since the Rambam already says, if you accept Achrayas, you're not allowed to have it. If you don't accept Achrayas, you're allowed to have it. So the Rambam deletes this case, because this case is not a substantial new case. It's just a manifestation of the case. The point is, if I give you a place in the house and I say, here, go find a place, I'm not taking a chayas for it. That's why I said, go find a place. My house is yours. Treat it like you want and find yourself chametz. And don't bother. It's basically a way of saying, don't bother me. Leave me alone. So the Rambam doesn't have to bring this case because he already brings the case of achrayas. So we know that the Rambam agrees with Rashi, and the same is true the Rif, who also doesn't bring this halacha in the halachas of the Gemara. Why don't they bring it? Because they hold like Rashi that what? That it's all about achrayas. Yichid Loy Bayis is simply another way of saying that you were a makabel achrayas, and therefore it's not considered yours, and even though it's considered your home, right? But Reb Ashi believes that the lo yimatzeh means it's not considered matzui, it's not accessible to you. And why is it not accessible to you? Because there's no achrayas, you have no relationship with it. Versus, if you were makabel achrayas, then even if you designated a separate place, it's considered matzui, it's accessible to you for your needs, just like it would be yours, even though it's not yours. But that's the chiddush, that kabbalas achrayas is what? It's called shelcha. It's considered yours because you own it, you're concerned over it. Where Rabbeinu Tam and the other shittas, Tosefos and other Rishonim, believe that it's not the case, even with achrayas, you're not mechoyev to be mevayed it. Why? Because it's like his home. It's not considered your home. Even though chametz of a Jew, if I give my own chametz to a goy to put in his house, then you would say you are over on Bhai Yamatzeh because it's my chametz. If I give mashke to a non-Jew, I say keep it for Pesach. Am I over on Bhai Yamatzeh? I would say yes, because wherever the place that he put the mashka, he borrowed me that place. He lent me that place, so it could be considered mine. But if it's his chametz in his house, and I'm a couple achrayas, we don't go so far, and therefore in my house I'm not allowed to have it, but in his house or a place in my house that I allow him to use, it would be completely mutter. So according to Tosefos, one of the two is fine. Even if you're makabel achrayas, if it's a separate home. Okay.
I accepted responsibility for his Comets in his house.
But then it's fine. It's still not mine. It's still not mine. Just like in his house, it wouldn't be mine. And even in my house, if I designated a place, it wouldn't be mine. This has the application to your question in the beginning of the shir. When we have chametz in our house that belongs to a non-Jew because we sell it to a non-Jew, right? Are we allowed to be makabel achrayas? So according to the Shitta of Rabbeinu Tam, even if you're makabel achrayas, because you designated a place, and it's not matzah to you, it's not accessible to you, so that would be perfectly fine. So even if you tell the guy, right, I'm assuming responsibility, don't worry. If somebody breaks into the house and takes the food, I'm going to pay you. According to Rashi, you would be over on Bhai Yamatzeh. But according to Tosefos, you wouldn't be over on Bhai Yamatzeh. Why? Because since it's a designated place that's not accessible to you, you tape it up and you say, this is your thing, it's not my thing, right? So it's not a gather of Yamatzeh. And therefore we say, just like if it would be in the guy's house, it's fine, I can be makabel achrayas. Even though it's in the Jew's house, we have a special limud of lo yamatzeh, that it's not matzui to me, it's not mezuman to me, it's not accessible to me, and therefore I can do it. Yeah. So this is a big machloikas in halacha and poskim. Are you allowed to let a guy put chametz in your house and be makabel achrayas if it's a distinct place?
Nothing to do with you might come to eat it.
There's nothing to do with God. No.
Even if you haven't articulated the makom, if you say it's yours, just
Find a place. But the point is you find a place. Or you may tell me where that place is, or I may show you. But the point is it's a designated place. It's not like I say, leave it in the drawer and I'll already figure out. We'll put it in the closet, we'll put it here, then it wouldn't work.
You say exactly where
Of course, that's another second issue, yeah. When you're selling, it has to be yichid loy. Because if it's his, yeah. Unlike a pikadon, which is different. I'm just saying, it's not the same case, I'm just applying it. Yes. You're not allowed to bring an avodah zarah into your house. No, this is talking about akum, it's not talking about a non-Jew. Today, most non-Jews are not idol worshippers. Not nobody, but there are, but it's not the regular avodas kechavim, avodah kechavim of the past is. It's a different Indian yet. It's with the Rabbanon yet. It's not the same. This is talking about a guy who comes into a house with avodah zarah. According to many poskim, put Salem. According to some poskim, Christianity is not avodah zarah for a non-Jew because he's shituf. He's allowed to do shituf. Islam for sure. Islam for sure.
And Mongol asked me, wanted me to build one room. Whatever it is, the whole child, if you're allowed to build.
Yes, avodah zarah. Yeah.
You want me to build a
There's a machlokes haposkim if goyim are allowed to believe in Trinity. Are bnei noyach mitzuva al hashituf? Is Christianity prohibited for a non-Jew because they believe in the Trinity? Many poskim hold it's not. They could believe that there's God with somebody else. So therefore, Christianity wouldn't be avodah zarah. Muslim religion is for sure not avodah zarah because Muhammad is not considered a God. He's considered a prophet. But even Christianity, it's a shaila if it's avodah zarah or not.
Yeah.
Well, only
my
real
house
avodah
in Monsey, it wasn't mine yet. I'm just saying.
But you didn't keep it there anyway. So today it's a very different halacha. This is talking about even outside of Eretz Yisrael. When they let you rent
So renting was not allowed even outside of it?
in Eretz Yisrael, many held you're allowed to rent. Many held not. Reb Meir held no. Reb Yossi held yeah. But even outside where you could for sure rent, right? He said don't rent it as a residence because he's going to bring an avodah zarah to your house. This doesn't have to do with Eretz Yisrael. You understand? Even Chutz La'aretz, if you give him a place to live, your house is going to be filled with avodah zarah, so you're not allowed to do that. You can give him a place for storage and other things, but not for avodah zarah. Ask the Gemara if he's a renter, what do you care? It's his house. The answer is no, it's still your house. Schiris loy kanya. Schiris kanya that he could use it, but it's considered your house.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.